Execution of Richard Jerf, the October 17th reckoning. The clock and the cold reality. It's a day marked on the calendar with a final indelible October 17th, 10 a.m. Arizona time. In the sterile, unforgiving confines of the Arizona State Prison Complex in Florence, a life is about to end. A life taken by the state for lives he took 32 years ago. This is the final dark chapter of Richard Kenneth Djerf. Today, we're not just discussing a case. We're witnessing an endgame. An execution by lethal injection, scheduled for a man who committed a crime so brutal, so utterly devoid of humanity, that the state of Arizona and the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell herself, called it the very reason the death penalty exists. Stay with me, because the story of the Luna family is a tragedy you need to hear, and the calculated, obsessive revenge that led to their massacre will chill you to the bone. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. The spark of vengeance, setting the stage. To understand the why, we have to go back to 1993, Phoenix, Arizona. A seemingly quiet, ordinary life shattered by something petty, something almost trivial that spiraled into the ultimate violence. Richard Jerf, then in his early 20s, believed he had been wronged. Specifically, he blamed a member of the extended Luna family, Albert Luna Jr., for the theft of some electronics and, crucially, a gun from his apartment. Now, stop and think about that. A dispute over stolen goods. A crime, yes, but one that in most cases results in police reports, maybe a minor court appearance. But for Richard Jerf, this wasn't about filing a claim. This was about obsession. This was about revenge. Prosecutors would later say that Jerf became consumed with the idea of exacting retribution. It festered. It grew into a dark, controlling monster in his mind. And it didn't just target the man he believed wronged him. It targeted the man's innocent, unsuspecting family. Months passed. The rage didn't cool. It was a cold, calculated fire. The day of horror, September 14th, 1993. September 14th, 1993. This is the date the lives of the Luna family, Albert Sr., Patricia, their daughter Rochelle, and their young son Damien were stolen. Jerf didn't storm in. He used deception. He showed up at the family home under the guise of an ordinary, benign delivery. He claimed he was delivering flowers. A twisted, macabre irony for the death he was bringing with him. What happened next is difficult to recount. It was a calculated, prolonged act of horror that showed a chilling lack of conscience. Let's break down the victims. Albert Luna Sr. and Patricia Luna, the parents. They were confronted in their own home. Albert Sr. was brutally beaten with an aluminum baseball bat, then shot, then stabbed. A vicious overkill that speaks volumes about Jerf's rage. Patricia Luna, tied to a kitchen chair, was then fatally shot. Helpless. Rochelle Luna, 18 years old. Her life was just beginning. Authorities confirm Jerf sexually assaulted her before cutting her throat. An act of utter depravity added to the act of murder. And then there was Damien Luna, just 5 years old. Kindergarten student, a child, tied to a kitchen chair, just like his mother, and then executed. 5 years old. Think about that for a moment. A tiny, innocent life extinguished by a monster over a stolen TV. The only surviving immediate family member, Albert Luna Jr., the one Jerf was allegedly targeting, was not present. He would return to a scene of unimaginable devastation, a tragedy that would haunt him and the extended Luna family for the rest of their lives. The legal maze and the guilty plea. The capture of Richard Jerf was swift, and the evidence was overwhelming. He didn't fight the core facts. In the end, Jerf chose a path that sealed his fate early. He pleaded guilty to all 4 counts of first-degree murder. The trial court in 1996 sentenced him to death. The conviction was affirmed by the Arizona Supreme Court in 1998, And that was it. The start of over 29 years on death row. Decades where the Luna family lived with the ghost of their loss. And Jerf lived with the inevitable final consequence hanging over him. In the lead-up to this final day, Richard Jerf, now 55 years old, made a decision that surprised some. He chose not to seek clemency. He acknowledged the horror. He released a statement a month prior to his execution, in which he acknowledged carrying out the killings and apologized for the pain he caused. But for the Maricopa County Attorney, Rachel Mitchell, the apology and the guilt plea were not enough to erase the brutality. She was firm. Quoting her, "There are some crimes so unspeakable, so devoid of humanity, that justice demands the ultimate punishment. This is that case, the final countdown, the execution day. And so we arrive back at the present. October 17th, 2025, 10 a.m., the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry is carrying out the sentence. Jerf's execution is significant. It marks Arizona's second execution of the year and the 39th in the country this year, a stark reminder of the reality of capital punishment in the United States. The protocol is lethal injection, a drug, typically pentobarbital, administered in lethal doses. A team of 4, including medical professionals, is involved in this meticulous and ethically complex process. Jerf declined a last statement. The final moments of silence, the last opportunity for words, passed without a whisper from the man who inflicted such widespread pain. The process, as described by prison officials, began. The 4 lines, the drugs. John Barcelo, deputy director, later described the scene. Jerf took a few heavy breaths, a brief snoring sound, and then the silence of death. The controversy, Arizona's execution history. But an execution is rarely simple, even when the convicted man doesn't resist. And in Arizona, the history of this process is deeply fraught with controversy. Jerf's death was declared at 10:40 a.m. The entire process, according to the Department of Corrections, went according to plan and without incident. But the details shared afterward raise familiar concerns. It took about 10 minutes for the execution team to successfully insert the 4 lines. Officials noted that Jerf's veins were not optimal, requiring multiple attempts to place the lines. This slow, difficult 4 insertion is the exact issue that has plagued Arizona's execution record and led to national scrutiny. Experts say the entire process, from insertion to death, should take 7 to 10 minutes. Jerf's process, from the first shot to the declaration of death, took around 15 minutes. The state has paused executions twice since 2014 over these concerns. The most infamous case that brought executions to a halt was in 2014. Joseph Wood. Wood was injected with 15 doses of a 2-drug combination over a horrifying 2 hours. Witnesses reported him snorting repeatedly, gasping hundreds of times before he died. It was called a botched execution and a violation of the 8th Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment. The state took an 8-year hiatus. Executions resumed, but the concern lingered. They paused again in 2023 for a full protocol review. The review ended just last year, with the governor firing the expert reviewing the protocols and the corrections department announcing changes to the lethal injection team. It's a moral and legal tightrope. The state is committed to providing justice for the victims, a closure that many families desperately need. But it must do so without violating the constitutional rights of the condemned. The fact that Jerf's 4 insertion required multiple attempts and that the process dragged past the recommended time will undoubtedly refuel the debate over whether Arizona has truly solved its execution protocol issues. For the state, Barcelo insisted, by all accounts, the process went according to plan. For critics, it's proof that the system is still fundamentally flawed. The aftermath, justice and closure. When the declaration of death is made, 2 narratives emerge. For the state of Arizona, there is a sense of finality. Attorney General Chris Mays, whose office sought the execution, sighed, "Those 4 innocent victims deserve justice, and their loved ones deserve closure." This is the purpose of the death penalty for its proponents: ultimate justice for ultimate evil. For the surviving son, Albert Luna Jr., and the extended Luna family, this day is meant to be the end of a nightmare that has been a shadow over their lives for 32 years. The weight of that loss, as County Attorney Mitchell noted, has been carried by them every single day. Today, that weight may be slightly lifted. But for the hundreds of prisoners still on Arizona's death row, 107 of them now, silence of the pentobarbital is a stark, terrifying reminder. The next 5 executions in the U.S. are already scheduled, spread across Florida, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. The conveyor belt of capital punishment continues to move. Richard Jerf's execution is a story about revenge taken and revenge ultimately received. It is the story of a crime that was deemed so devoid of humanity that society felt it had no choice but to demand the ultimate price. Conclusion and call to action. The story of Richard Jerf and the Luna family massacre is a haunting echo from 1993, a reminder of how quickly petty anger can metastasize into monstrous violence. And today, October 17, 2025, it serves as a powerful, unsettling look at the ultimate consequence of that violence. A 5-year-old child was tied to a chair and executed over a stolen TV. That is the dark, chilling heart of this entire case.